With that, I will call the Personnel Board meeting to order for Friday, July 12th, 2024. It is 8:30 a.m. and all members are present. First order of business is approval of June 21, 2024 meeting minutes. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So
I
moved.
move that we approve the minutes of June 21st meeting.
All right, there's a motion. There's a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Dorian?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And I'm I as well. Next, employee transition report.
So we have a very short report for you this month. We're very, very happy to welcome our new recreation director who started on July 1st, Travis. He's incredibly enthusiastic and, hit the ground running with camp and everything else right away. So that's our report for this month.
Great. Welcome, Travis. Look forward to meeting you. All right. Items for board discussion and approval. First is employee performance appraisals, certifications, and annual salary increases. So there's a new listing in the packet as we continue to go through the approvals. Vanessa, is this it?
We
Or
have
are there
one
more?
more to go. Denise Meyer in recreation, who works some very part-time hours. With the transition of Tim leaving and Travis starting, they are still working on Denise's review. So we'll have that for the next meeting. I wanted to just point out that the 4 library pages, we don't do the certification sheets for them per the board policy. So you don't see those in the packet, but they are included in the spreadsheet. And we just got last night, Jamie Hayes, Val DeAngelis, and Jenny, their certification sheets, which are signed. I can certainly forward those to you right away if you'd like to see them for your records. So everything else is in order on that spreadsheet.
If you could please forward those, that would be great.
Sure.
Vanessa, thank you.
Does anyone want to hold on approving those?
No,
Okay.
there's no reason to hold them.
Okay. Is there any discussion or questions for Vanessa on those?
Nope.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the listing in our packet?
So moved.
So
Is there a second? All right, I got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Dorian?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And I am I as well.
Thank you.
Jason, can I just make a comment on these reviews, the process?
Sure.
I'd like to see these get done in a more timely manner. And I understand this is a lot of people. But this is a month and a half after the deadline, and I don't think that's a reasonable amount of time. A couple of weeks maybe, but a month and a half, I just find unreasonable. These need to be done quicker for next year.
I wholeheartedly agree. Vanessa,
That's my comment. I mean, it's
can you
constant.
can you educate the board on when like the first communication goes out from you or Mark on this topic?
Sure. We did Barry and I think it was a joint email. I want to say it was the end of May, but I can go back and look at what date that was sent out, and we can certainly, kick that earlier into the year.
Yeah, so let's when we're planning for our future agendas, let's figure out what date we want to send it and actually put reminders in our calendars for this year. And then I think we can do a better job probably earlier on, but I realize like planning as an example, they have to officially meet as a board to approve these things versus we do have some that straggle just, and I realize some departments have a lot of employees, some don't. So good comment, Dorian.
Why don't we make it simple? Put it on if the certification's not in by a certain date. That's it. They stay where they are.
Well, it's
Can't do that.
I don't think it's
yeah.
the employee's fault.
I'm not. Yeah, I think we'll move on from that one.
You don't want to penalize the
Yeah.
employees.
For the
Yeah,
department.
that's the
head.
department head not getting it in, not the employees that.
Although we could hold on the department head until they're in, but I don't know if we want to do that either. So I don't know. We can
I
just
think you
get
just
the timing right.
You back the process up. You understand how
Yeah.
important it is, and you move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Vanessa, is it just people are busy? Are there reasons
I
that?
think
create
it, you know,
delays?
there are, like in the library, for example, you know, some of those took longer,
Okay,
because they work very part-time hours, you know,
I
for,
see.
Ryan to meet with them and go over the review. Our assistant director, was on, an extended leave.
Okay,
Here,
okay.
right at this time, so it was a combination of factors.
Combination of things. All right,
Agree
very
that we
good.
kick it earlier into the year in May.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that topic?
No, thank you.
Okay. Item B is discussion of warrant article for September 30th, 2024 special town meeting. So everyone is obviously aware, I think at this point, that there is a special town meeting that's officially been called. That's Mark and Vanessa to leave a placeholder for personnel board. We already know, due to some of the actions we've taken in prior meetings, that there will be some cleanup to the SAP that will be necessary there with positions we've added in it as such. But we have a short window here. Obviously, we're not going to do, I think, anything major and dramatic. But I think we do have an opportunity here, with there being this fall town meeting upcoming, to push forward items that we think are ready for the town to act on. So the first item was raised by Mark and Vanessa, so I'll let them speak to it, in addition to the memo that was in the packet related to the Schedule A and C updates, and then we'll move into the board discussing any other items that you want to be on a future agenda that we want to try to bring forward to that town meeting. So, Mark, Vanessa, I don't know who wants to take the lead on that one.
I'll start. Thank you, Jason. So there is a memo in your packet. We've been talking recently about developing a paid internship program. Just like recruiting, you know, we're having a hard time finding, you know, interns for certain departments that really value that without compensation. So that is something we are requesting that we add to the SAP this year. Primarily, this is in place, a program that would continue in youth and family services. That's where it happens just about every single year, except for this past year. So that is the crux of the request here, but it is also something that we're looking at. We've had an intern in one of our finance departments. You know, Mark and I have talked about it, you know, ourselves bringing, you know, an MPA student, for example, on in internship program. So we are requesting that we be allowed to add that. It seems to be most suitable to add it to the current Schedule C, which right now is predominantly for the recreation department for seasonal personnel. So if the board felt that was an appropriate area to classify this, then we would want to just change the title of that so it didn't reflect just recreation and make it more of a seasonal personnel. In addition, we would like to add a seasonal labor in there for the DPW. That was something many years ago that was in place in the SAP. When Karen Galligan was still here, you know, she didn't feel that it was still necessary, so we did drop that title. Probably a little bit premature. Bill kind of would really like to add that back in. So those are some of the things we'd like to do in the special town meeting article. I'll let Mark jump in if you wanted to add anything else, Mark.
No, I think in terms of the changes, I think, you know, that's about it. You know, that's about it for now.
Aside from the Board of Health titles, I should have started with that.
Well, Board of Health has nothing to do with this one, though, right?
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh,
I'm thinking Schedule A for the
Yeah.
health director.
yeah. So sticking to part-time, seasonal, potentially throw out the word per diem. I'm very supportive of broadening this section, right? This is clearly temporary help that is not subject to benefits. It's not, right? It's filling short-term needs or providing career development opportunities, and is candidly a recruiting tool as well. Let's face it, right? I think that was well referenced in the memo. I think we just need to figure out what the right terminology is here, right? To execute on this, and put limits on how long someone can be in this position. Right? In terms of, like, do we put that into the bylaw? Do we just call it per diem, which is right? Like, I mean, I think that's a well-defined term. You know, I would ask you to maybe think about some of that for the next meeting, but I'm very supportive of the concept in the direction. My other question for you is, I assume it's strongly recommended that there be job descriptions for each of these still, even given the intermittent nature of them. I just want to make sure, I don't want to over-engineer this, but at the same time, I don't want to under-engineer it. So looking just at a recommendation there of how you want to go about that.
I've collected some intern job descriptions. There's one in the packet just as an example. So I'm happy if the board wants a written job description to provide that for the next meeting.
Okay, what do other members of the board think?
I'd like to see a job description. I mean, we have them for the other positions, so I think that's a necessary step that has to be taken first.
Yeah, I think I am processing a couple of things. One is I think we talked about an internship is a defined period of time, and the goal is for development and not to replace a job. So I want to make sure there's a distinction between that, and I think the job description will help with that. But then some guidelines around how long we keep an intern, how we pay them. I'm curious about how we identify interns. If the goal is to create a pipeline for future potential employment, I'd like to see us be very broad and make sure we create opportunities more broadly so we can add more diversity to our personnel. And then I want to make sure that there is some training that happens, or some way that managers know how to sort of provide the right level of supervision for the intern and development. So we can talk more about that, but I'm in favor of the concept of internships. I just want to make sure it doesn't become sort of we're trying to put a Band-Aid over a bigger problem. And then there's no development for that individual that's part of that work.
What, you got any idea of what departments would be using intern?
Primarily Youth and Family Services, John. I think, we can talk a little bit more with Brian and Carla. They did have someone assisting them in the past. So that's what we're looking at initially.
Are these departments going to have the funds in their budgets to be able to pay these individuals?
Right now, the only one for this current academic year that we're looking at is Youth and Family, and yes.
Okay. Thanks, Vanessa.
Or
So Vanessa, does that give you what you need to kind of come back to us at our
it
next
does.
meeting? with
Thank you. I'll
something?
develop a job description for this for your next meeting, certainly. Thank you.
And I don't want to volunteer anyone, but Michelle, if you want to work offline with Vanessa, given some of your commentary, I
You
think.
already volunteered me.
No, I did.
I
It's
mean, your
Jason's
comments
turn.
are so-
John's next.
your comments were so on point, so.
Note to self. Okay, yeah, sure, I could work with them on
Thank you.
that.
Yeah. Thank you. And then Vanessa, I think more broadly, kind of referencing my comments, I think for the board, for the next meeting, we should have a red line. We should start to red line Schedule C of how
Yeah.
we want that to be worded, and obviously get Kate Federoff involved too if we need terminology on the wording, because obviously you're commingling now the recreation positions, obviously the DPW position, and potentially this intern position, which would be far broad reaching and not just for youth and family.
Sure. So one follow-up question there. So Schedule C is still a range. We did not do steps there. Just want to clarify, are we going to keep the range in Schedule C?
I like the idea of a range in Schedule
Okay.
C because they're not supposed to be staying around
Right, exactly.
permanently.
Right. Okay, no, that's helpful because the deadline is September 3rd for warrant articles for the special town meeting. So we'll have that ready for your next meeting to approve.
I.e. the language so they can sign the warrant,
Yes,
like the official language, not the placeholders.
correct.
Okay, yeah, so that's, a little less than 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you on that. So now I want to open it up really to, we really shouldn't talk about the substance behind them, but what I want to do is create a list of items that people want to or potentially bring forward or look at, if there's anything that you've been thinking about or want to start to address, and think we can address it in a less than 60-day window, that we have an opportunity. But as usual, I don't think we should rush something until it's fully vetted. So I didn't know if there are any topics on the mind of personnel board members that you'd like to see kind of tweaked or anything like that in the interim.
Not for me.
So Doreen's saying no. John, I saw you kind of go up with your hand. What do you have?
I guess it might not be a personnel board problem, but maybe a townwide problem. The recruiting, trying to get replacements for these people that leave and everything. I don't know how you do it. Mark would be able to tell us, but I think we've got to get him some more leeway to be able to counteroffer, like I said at the last meeting, to counteroffer when, like the recreation director was going to leave, to counteroffer to offer him the equivalent salary of what we gave the new guy, and we'll give him some latitude, but I don't know whether that's a townwide problem or.
It's a town code issue, right, Mark? If we were to go
Yeah,
there.
you know, and John, I appreciate the sentiment, but trying to compete with Brookline is probably not the best, not the best assessment to make. But yes, it is a you know, it's an authority issue, it's a code issue. So I think that there's a lot more that we need to do to try to find a path forward. And you know, again, I think it's whether it's a Kate Federoff to help us with this, or a consultant to help us with this, to try to figure out, as John has said, how we can retain the people that we have, you know, when really these positions, some of them may be underpaid. I know that if you lose these people, you're going to have to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 more to get somebody else in who is not going to have the knowledge and the history and maybe the experience that you're losing. You know, why can't we try to find a way to do that for the people that are here, you know, to retain them?
Yeah, the solution is we just keep paying more.
Well, you know, the thing of it is, John, is I think you need to at least be able to pay to keep yourself in the conversation. There's always going to be somebody paying more, right? You know, we do a real nice job here of creating a really good culture, you know, for people to come into. And sometimes culture means more, you know, than money, but money is important. And, you know, we need to make sure that we're not selling ourselves short by not offering the compensation, you know, and trying to say it's good here, we have good people, but we're going to pay you a lot less than what you're going to make someplace else. So, you know, if you can stick it out in a bad environment, you can make more money.
So I would suggest that this is not something that will be tackled in 60 days. I would suggest I think, Mark, my personal view is we'll add this to agendas moving forward. And obviously, given that it goes well beyond just personnel board, that we start with Kate and see if she has any recommendations of what she's seeing in other municipalities. She obviously understands our town code. And then obviously we're gonna have to work with select board and others, right? If we think that a change should be recommended, but it's gonna have to be a collaborative approach. So is everyone okay with that path forward on that particular item?
Yes.
Well, let me ask, Michelle,
Yes.
how in your
It's gonna
position
die.
where you work, how are they handling something like this? I'm sure there's got to be a turnover and.
Mhm. There are two pieces to this. So I was going to make a distinction. The one piece that I heard was the way in which we retain employees and some approaches for that. The other is the way in which we hire, like, so how we're competitive in terms of hiring for new positions. For the retention pieces, and this is where I thought we went through the whole salary study piece, right? So that we would be able to have some ability to be more competitive in the market. So to me, there are two pieces, just in terms
Michelle,
of,
can I just interrupt you for 2 seconds?
yes,
Because we're straying from the agenda item. I just
Oh.
want to acknowledge, though, that John's question is very much on point
okay.
with the next 2 items. So I want to let you continue,
Why
but
don't we just hold till we get to
no,
that?
you continue. I just want to make sure that people that just like to follow structurally understand that I feel like this is well encapsulated in the next agenda topic, and we'll
Okay.
continue to talk about. But sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought, but
Well,
I thought
do
it was
we want to
important.
conclude? You wanted a list of what we could accomplish in 60 days. So
Yeah.
do you want to conclude that conversation and then we can move into this other?
Yeah,
piece?
let's just do that, just to keep it clean. Thank
Okay.
you. So John, did you have any other topics you want considered for the special town meeting?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay, Michelle, do you have any topics for special town meeting?
I do not at this point.
Okay. I have a question for Brian Ballantyne. He's in the attendees, but if he's willing to answer it. I'm getting a little tired of approving the 3-week vacation requests every time someone's starting. And I know we've anchored it to experience, etc., but there's a lot of ways to thread that needle, as we've seen. I'd like to revisit that discussion at a future meeting of whether we start people with 3 weeks. My question for Brian is that an item, if we were to move forward with a change on, right, and adjust the vacation schedule yet again, is that an item he would like to see done at a fall town meeting to give him a chance to implement it mid-year or come to July 1st, or is that better for annual town meeting? I didn't catch that, Brian. It was a little muffled.
Oh, sorry, no, I just thought that was you were just saying something that's wrong. It's very certified over there.
Is it just me, or is
No, I can't understand anything
yeah.
he's saying.
Let me go check. He can come in here because having an issue. He's gonna jump on here. Hang on.
okay?
Okay, please repeat.
Oh, you didn't hear the question?
No.
If we were to change the vacation schedule, especially on the lower end, to again, the board's not going to discuss that today, but it's a theory that I want to tease out whether how quickly we need to discuss it or not. If to start people with 3 weeks, which then may have a cascading effect on, like, you have 2 years of service, 5 years of service, etc. Really trying to get away from having to approve everyone to get extra vacation when they're starting is the intent. What is the ideal effective date of that? Doing it at a fall town meeting and giving you 6 months to implement it for July 1st, doing a fall town meeting and implementing it the day after the fall town meeting, or doing it at an annual town meeting and implementing it on July 1st of the following year?
I mean, there's not a huge difference, but I'd prefer July 1st. Only
Okay.
because honestly, we have a lot of people now on July 1st. So it kind of just makes sense to roll it in like that.
Okay. Answer my question.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, John.
Maybe we shouldn't, what would that do to, recent hires that were on a 2-week schedule? Will we have to add them in?
Well, that's what we'd have to discuss. But I don't think we have any of those, or if we do, they're very limited. So it's just like we dealt with the others. So I think we have time, first of all. I know I shouldn't say that too often, because then we'll be sitting here and it'll be time to post the warrant for the annual town meeting. But we'd have to look at the population again. We have a mechanism in place now. We just will approve or listen to each case for any other hiring that's occurred from here on out. But that was my main rationale for bringing it forward. So we'd have to look at the full population, make sure everyone's adjusted and it's fair, just like we did last time. Okay. The only other topic I have for fall town meeting, and it's going to be aggressive, but it relates to kind of the 2 agenda items that we started to delve into. So I'll just read the agenda items and then we can decide where we want to go with it. Is review survey of longevity payments and discussion of existing salary structure. So to the extent that we can all agree on something, or we have a mechanism to deal with this, I'm certainly open to kind of keeping that discussion open as until we get as close as possible to September 3rd. And I think, Mark, the important part for you as we start talking through this is there's likely a dollars component to anything we do here. Language is obviously important, but as you and Brian think about wherever the board decides to go with this discussion, is obviously we're going to need to get with select board and advisory if we are going to do something mid-year, or even if we're going to implement something mid-year for July 1st of next year, get everyone on kind of the same page of when's the right time to do something, how do we do it, and what is the funding mechanism for that. So we're going to need some assistance there as we go. But I think before we go into a detailed conversation, I want to give Michelle back the floor to answer recruitment versus retention is, I think, where you were going. So, and I think that dives into all of these topics.
It does. So I had a couple questions actually, which I maybe should know, but so what I can tell you is that there are some themes that people are interested in, whether it's retention or whether it's recruitment. Couple of those, and I know we're going to talk about the longevity bonuses. I'm curious about the way we handle, or if we even offer any hybrid work or opportunities for people to do some things remotely if their role can accommodate it versus being on site. I don't have enough insight into that. So maybe, do we offer anything like that?
Vanessa, Mark?
So we do have, I can think of a very small group of employees that are working in a hybrid fashion. We have not gone back yet to really rewrite the remote work policy that we developed during COVID. It still is very much focused on, how long you should stay home when you test positive, and, other things that were more pertinent at the time. So that's something Mark and I talked about recently, that we should, be updating that very soon. We have not had conversations, yet at all about a more formal hybrid environment.
Thank you. So these are just things that come up from my experiences around, can I work remotely? Are there arrangements or opportunities for that? We just talked about the PTO or vacation policy. So that's an opportunity there for either retention or as another attractive factor and enticing people to become part of the town. Professional development, and I know we've been doing some work around that, and I think we need to continue that work. And then I think I'm also curious about whether we do or whether we talked about this before, exit interviews. I think, Vanessa, you talked about having those conversations, because there might be some themes that are coming up that maybe we haven't thought to address. So that might be important to do. In terms of the recruiting piece, what I'm not sure about is if we have the right tools to recruit. So if we're just posting it, or we're doing, like, I know Vanessa and I have talked about maybe some free sites that are used, but we may have to invest in something a little bit more robust that gets our positions out more broadly, or that allows us to reach some different audiences that maybe we haven't in the past.
So that's actually something we're doing this morning.
Oh,
We've had conversations this week with Kathy Cook, the chair of the select board, about, like, right now we have an opening for a full-time civil engineer in DPW. You know, it's been out there for probably 3 weeks now, and I have one applicant. So we spoke with Kathy earlier this week about, you know, really making use of the paid version of Handshake, which is more of a college academic portal for recent or new graduates, as well as Indeed. Like you said, Michelle, we've only been using the free version. You know, that's not getting us, you know, the kind of applicants we need. So we're actually this morning, you know, setting up the ability for Indeed and Handshake to sponsor this particular job, you know, at a low-ish rate, to
Mhm.
see, you know, if that makes a difference for us. But that's something
Okay.
we have not done in the past and we are starting to do today.
Great. So those are my comments, I guess, for now, not having sort of more in-depth understanding of which roles we're having challenges with. And then, of course, there's a compensation piece, which I know we're gonna go talk about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intangible benefits that we can provide, like you're suggesting, outside of the compensation, that should certainly be part of the equation, because that not only it deals with both the recruitment and the retention. And just I can tell you, in private sector, as Michelle is probably saying too, right? It depends on the role, depends on the position, depends on the tenure, depends upon the environment of what we're all working in, and we all know the environment changes in each of probably these departments on a daily basis, right? In everyone's world, the market is certainly highly volatile. So, we should just continue to try to be as cutting edge as we can in the municipal sector, realizing that there are significant boundaries as compared to the private sector. So let's do this. Let's go into the financial component. Okay, so I think we all agreed when we approved the rec director starting above the midpoint step at the last meeting, that we wanted to, and I think it was Dorian's comments, but there was consensus across the board here. We really wanted to revisit and make sure we were taking care of our existing employees, right? And making sure, we were doing the right thing there. I think it's been referenced multiple times already in this meeting about how much it costs to retrain someone, how much it costs to go out and acquire the talent. And we're not even talking about using recruiters. I'm just talking about, right, like the time, the energy, etc. So I think we as a personnel board have an obligation, even though we have a moral obligation, we don't have a requirement in the SAP to revisit how we're compensating our existing employees. I think there are two ways to look at it, and you can see that that's how we structured the agenda. One, if we're just looking to reward longevity with the town, and even though the longevity schedule would suggest that we're very competitive in that certain bucket, whether we do something there, right? If we're just trying to reward tenure, that's one thing. But I think as you look across, in comps are always dangerous, right? That what someone does in Southborough is not what they do in Westborough or Northborough or other towns of similar size. And I realize I just referenced two towns that are larger than Southborough. But I think it's important that we at least do some sort of review. I think it's up to the personnel board to define the scope of that. We're 2 years into a 4-year cycle of when we're required to do it. But I think we've seen enough, at least in my own opinion, to warrant, some level of review and potential adjustment where we find anomalies. Now, I think we've all just recovered from what was the Collins Center process, right? And what came out of that. Now, look, our employees are a lot better off as part of that process. I know there was a ton of frustration with parts of the process. That's not what we're here to discuss. I think our employees are certainly being more fairly compensated than they were when we started that process. The question for me is, did we do enough as part of that process to make sure that we are retaining the right talent with an understanding that there always will be some level of voluntary turnover because of, great opportunities. I think one was already referenced in this meeting today, right? Like we're not gonna necessarily always financially match. It might just be the person's skills, qualifications are a better match for a different size municipality or a different size program, or it could just be a commuting item, which obviously you get to with that. So what I have some ideas, but I don't want to lead on this, is really see what the personnel board would like to do and whether we can do something in 60 days or whether this is going to be something for July 1st. And to see where you want to go with this. So I don't know who wants to go first, but I think we owe it to our employees to have this discussion and start to chart a path on a plan. What that plan is up to us. Go ahead, John.
I think it would bear us good will and good sense to listen to what Brian said. It's a lot easier for him to look at July 1st rather than something that we would do in 60 days.
Well, I want to. Vacation is a lot different than salary. Obviously, salary requires funding, but that's just a change of a pay rate in a system. I don't want to oversimplify what gets done there. Can Brian specifically weigh in on that point related to if we were to adjust any salaries and got the funding to do so mid-year, is that an issue or you still prefer July 1st? And don't know if he's gonna have audio issues or come running into Vanessa's office.
Let me check it on that.
You may not have heard your question.
While we're getting Brian, I will say that,
He's coming.
oh, fantastic. Hi, Brian.
I'm here again. So what, I caught part of it, but what is this?
If at fall town meeting, we received funding for additional salary or longevity for FY25, do you have the same concern about implementing that mid-year as compared to the vacation where you indicated a preference for July 1st?
No, longevity is scattered throughout the year as it is. So I'm assuming you would base it with the same methodology on I would assume, maybe not, but if you're basing it when the employee's anniversary hits, which we do now, and that's scattered throughout the whole year. So for me, I don't care, to be honest, if it's that type of, thing you're looking at.
And what if we adjusted someone's pay rate?
No, same thing. I don't really care about that either. That's fine.
You just need the funding.
Just need the funding.
Okay.
Has there been any thought of incentivizing the longevity payments like that was recently done for the police union or?
Well, you may have to educate us because I don't think any of us are reading the police union contract. So what happened there?
You wanna-
I'll let Mark explain that. I mean, I can. I don't know if he wants to jump in.
Sure. So the police chief and I and Labor Council were working with the police union. They're having significant issues of retention. It's not just in Southborough for police. It's all over the state. If you watch the news about any police department, they talk about staffing shortages and unable to provide details, et cetera. So, we've been having issues with retention. And we worked to incentivize people to stay with some one-time longevity payments, which should people leave during the term of the payment, they then have to pay it back in its entirety. So again, it is a retention tool that we are using with police right now. How broadly the application could be for other groups is yet to be determined.
Okay. So yeah, I think it is, Brian, that is one of our two tools I think we have in our tool belt right now is if we're just trying to incentivize tenure with the town, right? And not have to go into individual positions, that's one tool we can easily implement absent the funding question.
Right.
I think the broader question is if you looked at individual jobs, right? Let's just say position A and position B. Position A may be grossly out of whack with the comps. Position B may be right on target or potentially even high. So in that instance, I'm sure we would recommend position A be brought in line with their peer group versus position B is going to be very disappointed because they already were in line, which, so right, it just sets up A versus B discussion. So, other thoughts from the personnel board of how we want to do this?
We just have to do it correctly, so we're not redoing this stuff constantly. So can we do it thoroughly in 60 days, or should we wait till July? I mean, we should do a good job at it, be thorough. If we're just gonna hurry up and get it done so we make fall town meeting, I don't think that's the right thing to do. But I have no idea. I don't know what it entails, so I'm asking.
Well, I think without knowing what it entails means annual town meeting.
Yeah,
Right,
agreed.
because if we've got to, really understand the issue, put together a plan for some level of study and recommended corrective action, that's not 60 days. And quite honestly, you really have about 6 weeks, to get this done and ready for the warrant. So, if we're going to do this, let's try and do it right.
Then I would go for July for the regular, annual town meeting, Jason.
I am very much in agreement. If we're going to do anything with pay rates, that's what we should do. I think the only opportunity we have is adjusting the longevity schedule in the meantime. If we want to do something in 60 days, that's absent the funding question, that's a lot easier to articulate, quantify, and make uniform. The pay rate discussion, we are not going to get that done in 60 days, even if we had everyone focused on it, more than the time than they actually have. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think if we can enhance the longevity schedule, that we can do in 60 days. So I agree with that. A salary study typically, well, let me just broadly say, if it's done the right way, the market doesn't shift that fast. So every 2 years or 3 years should be fine if it's done comprehensively and it's done the right way. So I just want to actually start with that big sort of statement. If we want to go down a path of doing another market study, we can do that, or salary study, but it won't happen in 60 days. So Mark, you are absolutely correct in that. If we're going to do it, we want to do it the right way and do it in a comprehensive way. So we're not back a year from now trying to do this again. I also think that there are opportunities for us to think about some retention strategies for really critical roles where if for whatever reason they decided to leave, we can't operate, we can't function well as a town. So there's opportunities that we can think about some type of retention incentives maybe during that time. But I think right now, if we can get some movement on the longevity study, or I'm sorry, the longevity bonuses, that might be a nice incentive to start with while we talk about what we really want this, if we're going to pursue another salary study, what do we want those outcomes to be? Why are we doing it? And then think about how we make that happen.
So I'll weigh in with my suggested path based on that. On the longevity, I think the first thing we start with, Brian, is I know we know what the numbers are, like by 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years. I think what we need from you is what we're actually paying out in longevity by person, right? What is the average tenure of our employees, right? And just having a spreadsheet showing that, and potentially before the next meeting, what you, myself, and anyone else that should be involved from the town administration side can do is model out a few scenarios of what increasing stipend A to by $500, by $1,000, $2,000, what it does from a budgetary impact, right? Because I think we'd want to get an initial preview from advisory in select board of the appetite for that, because I don't know the broader financial, other than obviously broader financial picture is always very difficult, but like what would be the cap, right? In figuring out where we want to incentivize, and bring back a few proposals to the personnel board. So does that sound like a good path on longevity?
Easily, we could easily get that fairly easily, yes.
Okay. Now here's a more difficult question, right? And we're not going to do this before town meeting, but I think we need to be aggressive as a board of not letting this kind of just slip, right? Is really, what are we going to do for the compensation process? To me, I think we have two options. One, we go find an external vendor, right? I think we have some funding in our budget to do something like that, and have them do a process. And I'll talk about what that process in my head sounds like, and I welcome the views of the board when I outline that. Or two, we just, we have a certain number of positions, we do a internal benchmarking study, and we reach out to, the towns that we all agree are comps and figure out what they are paying their individuals. And to the extent that there is a major disconnect in the role, in the actual role, in the description. So I'm going to pick town administrator because this doesn't apply, because obviously Mark's on a contract. If town administrator was making $5 in one town, but we're only paying in Southborough $1, right? Town administrator in the other town that's making $5 may have 10 things more that they're required to do than town administrator in Southborough that's making one. So that's where it kind of starts to unravel a little bit, right? And we know that exists, right, across the board. And it's not just the size of the community can work in someone's benefit. It can also work in the detriment, right? In Southborough, right? Well, we don't necessarily usually have the number. We're comparing to larger communities. These folks usually don't have support staffs, or if they have support staffs, it's bare bones, right? And if they are the support staff, they're usually supporting a lot of folks, not just, staying kind of in the silo in some instances, right? And we've seen a little bit of that, some of the roles. So we have to be careful there. If you start doing comps between towns, that the roles just may be very different. And if we were doing that internally, like, it's just a slippery slope, because like, how far do you go to try to see this? To me, I just need to see if we're actually really out of whack, or if it's like how far out of whack we are and how many positions are out of whack. That's where I want to start. And I don't know that. I know what people say, but I need to understand really what the data shows us before we kind of take that next step of understanding what the role in the other community does. So before I pause, I also think if we were to go with an external process, and having lived and seen at least what got presented to the personnel board, I wasn't involved with any of the back end conversations last time. I think really that insight is with Barry and potentially some at the townhouse. Is I think we focused too much on like the salary range, right? Like we just had a low and an end, right? And then that informed obviously the grid that we put in place, which I strongly believe still is incredibly beneficial to our employees. But what I think we missed the opportunity to do, and we were very focused on what does the person do. I don't know that we ever saw, and I'm going to use town administrator again, where town administrator compares to these comp communities to make sure that just nothing stood out on a piece of paper. I don't remember ever seeing it. Someone correct me if they're wrong, if I'm wrong on that. That's what I want to focus on. It's just like Town administrator was gonna go look for another job tomorrow. What is that market? We're not gonna pay it 100% of the market. We need to be very clear on that. But we also aren't gonna pay it 25% of the market. So those are my thoughts. I think what I'd like the board to do today on the process is either, if we want to go external, give some direction to Mark and Vanessa of what we want to do externally so that they can bring us quotes. But if we think we want to just start with a spreadsheet that shows what the Southborough individual makes and then what they make in 5 comparable communities, and then decide whether we need external, those are the 2 options I think I'm presenting forward to you today, unless anyone has any other ideas of how to bridge that process.
I would go the internal step first and then see what we find, and then go to an outside vendor if we have to.
John?
And I hear the word study and I just cringe. The money that our town and other towns spend on studies and what we went through the last time around, I think we've got the wherewithal within town, although it might be more work for Vanessa and Mark or whatever. We gotta stay internal and we make up our mind as to what we're gonna pay these positions, what we can afford to pay them. And that's what we do. I don't want to be any part of any external study.
Mark, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so John, I don't like the S word either, but I think I'm also concerned about the I word here, which is integrity. And I think that if we do this internally, the people that are going to be doing some of this work may be the people that could be impacted by it. And I don't want to cast any doubt on the results that this was self-serving, for doing some of the work. So I agree with you. I think we could internally do some work and do some of this to show that there is an issue, but in terms of how best to correct the issue and everything in that, I really think you need somebody from the outside who doesn't have a vested interest in the outcome to give you a proposal that is, beyond reproach.
I don't,
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'll use Brian because again, Brian's easy. Brian's on a contract, but if Brian is going out and getting this information and, and collecting all of this and showing that Brian is significantly underpaid and Brian had, and then Brian's position is adjusted by $30,000, I really think that, some people will say, well, that really was a little bit self-serving that Brian did all this work just to essentially, get himself an increase. So I'd rather not allow people to have that opportunity. Not saying they do it. I'm just saying that, I try to avoid that if we can.
well,
Hang on, Michelle has her hand up.
we are the personnel.
John.
Board. Pardon?
Yeah.
We are the personnel board. And I'd be willing to help out with that. I got plenty of time. For the first time in 60 years, I have no employment. But, and I'm not partial, but I'll tell you, you spend the money you spend for these external studies.
All right, I'm gonna go to Michelle.
I think that I will probably be the unpopular opinion here, but I think we definitely need to be external. We want a validated study. If as a board, we're going to vote on compensation matters, we want a validated study to make sure that we are voting, as Mark said, with the integrity and the non-partiality of just looking at what's in front of us, having the right level of assessment around what is the scope of this role versus that role, looking at equity across the board. I think it's, and I do think it's a significant amount of work for Vanessa and Mark. on top of whatever else they have on their plate. So I personally think we need to be thinking about an external study. I know it's the S word, but if we do it right, we won't have to do it again for several years. And I think our employees would be, would maybe have a higher level of confidence in what the outcomes are if they felt like it was done externally, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that.
So,
And go ahead.
go ahead. Are you done?
I think I am, yes.
Okay. So, for now,
For now.
so, let me ask this question, then I'm going to tell you where I'm at. Mark, if we did something formal, does that reset our 4-year clock?
In my mind, I think it would, because you're really doing a lot of the, a lot of the things we've done over the past several years, I think have continued to reset our clock. When we did the paying class study, and then we did the job descriptions, and that really gave it another, it turned the diamond just a little bit and gave us a different look at it, some of these positions and whether they're where they should be. And now we're going to do this. I really think so. I think if we're going to go out and do this, we're just doing it. We're doing the same thing we did 2 years ago, but from a different angle. So I think, in my opinion, this would reset the clock.
Do you think that's something we should just confirm with Kate Federoff?
Sure.
Because that may influence where I'm going to go. So I'm in the middle here. I'm not.
So Jason, I think the best thing to do then is to, whether this board, and probably should come from this board, is to provide me in writing, or provide, a definition of, here is what we're looking to do. And then I can give that to Kate, and Kate can say, yes, this really falls within a, what a paying class study would be. So essentially, you did it 2 years ago, you're doing it now, you wouldn't have to do it again for another 3 or 4 years.
And because I think I joined the board, we were well into the other study through the Collins Center. I'm curious about what is sort of driving us to be having this conversation at this moment. Is it just the fact that we can't, that we're having challenges with attracting new talent? Is it the retention pieces? I guess I'm not sure where we felt like the gaps might have been in that study. And I guess I want to make sure I understand what we're solving for and why.
My impression, and I use that word deliberately, is when we have done it's. I think this is more about recruitment versus retention. Going back to your earlier, is when we have done recruitment processes recently.
Okay.
For most situations, we are bringing someone in very close to midpoint, if not above midpoint, in the one exception we just approved, right? And there's been a few others too, right? Versus if you look within that grade, right? So the salary survey clearly looked at previously, were these positions based on job description in the right grades? However, our existing employees are all for the most part, this is not right. For the most part, all of our employees are well below the midpoint of their grade, right? So there's a perception, right? I'm not saying it's a reality, but a perception, right? I need to prove whether it's reality or not now for all of us, of whether that is the right answer, but no one position is the same, right? So my personal view is somewhere in the middle of probably average where John was and where Michelle is
Okay.
I really don't want to do a study, but I think that is the way you build the integrity around it. So what I would like to do, in respecting everyone's opinion here, is I would like, if the board's comfortable with it, for me to articulate the issue in a paragraph and have Mark go out to vendors and see what they would actually suggest in terms of a scope. But I mean, there's only a few parties that do this. And at the same time, what I would like Mark to do is if we came back to him and said, we're not doing a survey, we're doing this internally, how he would break up the existing job description, like the job grades, right? Of Mark would deal with, I'll just use an easy example. Mark would obviously have to deal with Vanessa's, right? And whether that the assistant town administrator, but what categories could Vanessa do? Because she's not like involved in the daily operations of those departments, right? Like how he would break up kind of the review and going out and vetting that. I think it's important for the board to see that, because does it resolve the integrity question, or does it prove that there's no way to get around the integrity question? And then if we decide to go forward with a survey, my goal would be that that survey resets our 4-year clock and we go to town meeting to get funding for the survey, because my guess is we're not going to be able to fund it with our existing budget or the full amount. I don't really want to do a survey. We're very clear on that, but I think we have
I don't
to
think
do-
any of us want to,
yeah,
but like,
but I
no,
unfortunately
That's
think
helpful.
that might be the answer, but it's got to be a very different, well thought out process this time than what we did last time to kind of thread this needle. Because I think we need to prove whether we have an issue or not. Perception wise, we have an issue right now. Now, is it reality or not? And I'm sure there is some reality to it. I think we all probably could go out and do our own research today, but how broad is that reality?
Jason, didn't we do the Collins Center and start that in 2020? Because we have to do a quadrennial review. It's required. We have.
But it didn't get implemented until basically a year ago. It was
Okay.
implemented at the 2022 town meeting. If I've got that right? So it would have been effective on July 1st of 23. So last year, the last fiscal year that just closed last week, right, was the first year that was effective. That's where we adjusted all the ranges. Someone keep me honest if I've got my years wrong.
So we spent, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, $12,000 with them to do that study.
20.
Yeah, I can't remember.
They were cheaper. They were cheaper. They were the cheapest one. They were the less expensive, I should say, not cheapest.
We
less
got what
expensive.
we paid for.
Right, but I'm just looking at, we spent that money already. That's why I want to do this internally. I really hate to go back to the taxpayers. We just did this. We just paid for it. And to ask them to do it again because it wasn't done well.
I don't disagree with you. I just want to, I'm going to have to come up with a methodology on how this is done so that people that may be impacted have nothing to do with any recommendations that impact their position. And considering we don't know what we don't know yet, I can't tell you, who's going to be, if Vanessa's one of the people, that we're looking at, is it appropriate for me to do that as her supervisor? Maybe, okay. If we've got other people in select board office that we're looking at, for example, who then, does those, could I have Brian do? Well, Brian kind of supervises one of the people in our office. If it's that position, again, there's a lot of trapdoors here. So I just I'm fine, doing the initial groundwork and seeing where we think the issues are. And then, working with personnel board to say, okay, here's how I think we should do this. But personnel board, I think, has got to direct this. I can give recommendations, but I think personnel board's going to have to direct this just to try to, again, we want to maintain the integrity of whatever we're going to do.
I completely agree with maintaining the integrity. I would just personally like to maybe identify if we actually have an issue and where it may be, and then maybe go to a study, because now we have a reason for it.
Yeah.
Not to necessarily have you do all the work and give people raises. I understand the integrity piece, but I think it's our job to identify an issue first, since we just had this study done.
Right.
So that's where I'm coming from.
So are you open to doing that, Mark, before our next meeting? Like, do we have an issue?
When's your next meeting?
I think that it's pretty quick.
Tomorrow.
So I don't know if you've noticed, I've been multitasking during the meeting, working on the draft warrant for the special town meeting. So, I mean, I can, if we're gonna meet, I assume sometime in August.
Yes.
Yeah, if you do more towards the mid, the second, maybe third week in August, then maybe I can try and start getting a sense. I mean, we know what our comp communities are. Our comp communities, generally work for most positions. I know that they, are a little shaky when it comes to some of the public safety stuff, but I think we can use what we have and make some phone calls and get some information to at least get a sense of, whether we think we may have some issues and where we may have them. So
Okay.
I will commit now that I think it's reasonable.
All right. And then does anyone on the personnel board, you don't have to vote yes for it when it comes forward. Does anyone have any objection to Mark or Vanessa at least reaching out to the consultants that work in this area to hear what they would propose in terms of a scope, not a fee, very clear, not a fee, but just like how they are seeing other communities deal with this. And also, Mark, I think just using your network on the town administrator side, I realize every town code is different, and especially the ones that have the authority to do this, we wouldn't be having this issue probably,
Right.
for the most part. So does anyone have any objection to at least them starting a conversation to see what options are available to us to potentially consider if we're not comfortable with the internal approach?
No problem with it.
I guess I'm not sure what if I don't know that we know do we know the objectives to be, I mean, we can reach out, but I guess my question is, because I wasn't here on the board then, we had a vendor. How are we selecting vendors if we had a vendor that we ended up not really feeling like we got what we?
I'll
Okay.
give my reaction. We did not ask the right, if I had to revote again, we did not ask the right questions of the vendor up front in terms of the process they were going to and the oversight of the process was flawed. And I'm not putting on any one person. That was the personnel board, that was town administrator. That was just like we didn't, and we just let the cart keep going down the path as opposed to stopping it when we kind of started to get a little squeamish about where it was headed. So I think if I had to put a one sentence objective, it would be something along the lines of to ensure that our existing employees are being compensated in a fair and equitable manner for what they are being asked to do.
Okay. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm okay with it. I just
I don't know what it's going to tell us, but I just want to kind of keep these paths moving forward as opposed to, oh, let's talk about it again next meeting. I want like maybe some decisions.
yeah, and I guess we're looking about, we want to make sure we're asking in terms of scope, it's competitive and it's equitable. Because the whole goal is to make sure that, I mean, internal equity is one thing, but we're also trying to focus on, are we competitive in the market?
Right.
So I'm totally fine with that.
I mean, that's just it. I mean, we do have retention issues in certain departments, but we also have, recruitment issues in some departments, but and retention issues in some departments. But I think this is going to be as much about retention as it is, and I think it's more about retention than recruitment. If let's pick on Brian. If Brian leaves tomorrow, and we start looking at comps and tell the board, look, we're going to have at least $30,000 to $40,000 more available to us to be competitive, to get in the type of candidate that we would be trying to replace Brian with. The town's going to have to come up with the money in order to be competitive. That's a different question and probably an easier question than it is to try and say, we know that Brian's, peers are being paid at a higher level. we want to make sure Brian is in that conversation so that he doesn't feel the need to look. He's, you know, he wants to stay here. So I'm as concerned about that piece of it. You know, we've got a really good team. You know, we've got very good people that work for the town. You know, we want to make sure that we, you know, that we compensate them fairly. You know, again, there's always greener grass somewhere, but we want to make sure we compensate them fairly so that they, you know, they want to stay here.
All right, I'm gonna move us on from this topic. Good discussion. I'm glad we're making some progress. Next item is other business. So the only thing is I'm gonna send out or through Vanessa, I'd like to start personnel board office hours. We can have no more than 2, just to give employees an informal off ramp to come and have a discussion with 1 or 2 personnel board members. So there's no requirement to do it, but to the extent that anyone is interested in doing it and just, I'll call it sitting at the townhouse, sitting at public safety, wherever we decide to do these, and just listen to any concerns or issues raised by the employees. I would say once we start those though, I need to know about agenda topics, right? So if there is something that comes out of that discussion that you want on the agenda, especially if I'm not there, just, you know, please let me know. So again, not required, but I just wanted to at least announce that in public, realizing that the employees will probably be listening, and we can have a discussion at future meetings once we have a few under our belt of the structure, the frequency. But I think it is good to have a rotation of members that are interested in doing it, not just like, doesn't make sense for the chair to just go sit there. Like, you know, there's different perspectives, right? They may want Michelle's perspective on something. They may hear something that Dorian said in a meeting, John said in a meeting. So I think it's worked well for select board and others that do that. And I'd like to kind of bring it to the employee level now.
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
I think it's great. I would ask that we put some guardrails around that. What I have concerns about, what immediately came to mind are things that come up that might be something that's part of a compliance issue, or that's part of a sort of employee issue that really should be spoken about with Vanessa or.
Yeah, well, we'll do
So
that,
my
yeah.
concern would be that someone would come in this informal setting, start talking about something. It doesn't dawn on certain of us that, oh my goodness, they're really talking about an issue related to, I don't know, harassment or something, and it doesn't get conveyed back. So I just want to make sure that we're like more clear about the topics in which we want to be talking about, and which
Yeah. And cutting the conversation off, right, if it goes down.
That's my concern.
Okay. Very fair and valid point. Is there any public comment?
Nope.
Okay, board calendar, I think we will again do this via email once. Mark, I want you to think about when you're gonna be ready for that discussion, and maybe we'll anchor around that. And then we can decide whether it's live or virtual, depending on the dates that we throw out to the board. But it'll be about a month from now, just unless there's, I'm not aware of any topics that should come up between then. There a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, that's been seconded. Roll call vote. Dorian,
Aye.
John,
I
Michelle,
Aye.
and I am I as well. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Same.
Bye.
Bye.